start this.
Okay, recording has begun. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Mr. Irwan and fellow debaters. My name is Sam, and I will be the chairperson for this debate. And for this debate, the rules are as follow. There shall be no vulgarities, and at least one POI has to be accepted by both teams. The topic for this debate is whether or not alcohol should be banned. For the affirmative is Melanie, and for the opposition is Julia. We shall now begin with the affirmative.
So, good morning, Chairperson and fellow students. So, the topic for our debate is that alcohol should be banned in Malaysia. So, we, the affirmative team, define the topic as the banning of the manufacture, storage, transportation, sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages. For the purpose of this debate, alcoholic beverage is being defined as a drink which contains more than 0.5% of the recreational drug ethanol, a type of alcohol that is produced through the fermentation of grains, fruits, or other sources of sugar in 100 milliliters of the drink. So we believe that alcoholic drinks with an alcohol content of more than 0.5% for commercial purposes should be illegal in Malaysia. So today, as a first speaker, I will be talking to you about the link between alcohol and crime, such as violent crimes and domestic violence. Our second speaker will be talking about alcoholism, while our third speaker will be talking about underage drinking. Our final speaker will be rebuilding the negative team and summing up our team case. So I'll be talking about the negative impact of alcohol on the instigation of crime. So according to the government, 1 in 2 alcoholic drinkers in Malaysia practice binge drinking. That is, they drink 6 or more standard alcoholic drinks in one sitting. 1 in 10 of them practice HED, which is practicing binge drinking weekly. The problem with this is that Malaysia already has the highest crime rate in Southeast Asia and is the top 20 countries with the highest crime rates globally. So one way that alcohol can actually affect criminal rates in Malaysia is that the areas near bars and clubs which serve alcohol actually show a significant increase in crime. The issue of crime in Malaysia is further complicated because alcohol actually plays a large role in criminal activities and violence. Alcohol actually increases the risk of either experiencing or perpetuating sexual violence. Meanwhile, there's also a positive correlation between robbery and violent crimes and alcohol use. In international studies, an estimated 63% of violent crimes worldwide involve the use of alcohol. So, excessive drinking has been shown to lower inhibition, impair one's judgment, and increase the risk of aggressive behavior. Over the past several decades, researchers have begun to examine the link between alcohol and crime. So, data suggests that engaging in prolonged drinking or binge drinking significantly increases your risk of committing violent offenses. So this is a really serious issue in Malaysia, considering that half of those Malaysians drinking alcohol practice binge drinking. While criminal activities actually come with consequences in itself, such as legal fees, jail time, and fines, studies have actually shown that there's a positive correlation between heavy drinking and aggression. So while the law already punishes those that abuse alcohol and should act as a deterrent, this increase in aggression as well as the practice of heavy drinking itself can prevent someone from recognizing the danger that drinking can have, namely the violent and criminal consequences. So by banning alcohol, it ensures that people have no access to alcohol and therefore cannot engage in heavy drinking. Restricting the consumption of alcohol and the transportation into the country will also help those who are most vulnerable in families. The Women's Aid Organization cited that of the 96% of domestic violence cases, 31% of them reported to have been influenced by alcohol, compared to the 13% that said that drugs were a factor. If alcohol plays a bigger role in occurrences of domestic violence compared to drugs, should they not reason that we should ban alcohol as well? In the 1800s, opiates and cocaine were mainly unrestricted drugs. And it is only when cocaine began to be associated with crime that public concern actually increased, which led to the government to ban drugs. So, as previously mentioned, alcohol also has a positive correlation with crime. It also causes crime, similar to how drugs cause crime. Yet, despite the link between alcohol and crime, it is still a product that is readily accessible in Malaysia. So, in the end, the outright ban of alcohol will no doubt decrease the overall crime rates in Malaysia. So, that is all from me as a first speaker. And now I'll pass it on to the opposition team.
All right. Thank you, Mel. So we would actually disagree that opening statement. Yeah, really. I apologize. Okay. Um. Okay. For us, we are the opposition team. We do not agree banning alcohol as it okay. Not agree alcohol banning due to it does no, it's okay. Marks are affected anyway, so it's alright, it's fine. Majority of people actually drink alcohol to actually release stress.
Julia, can you have your mic a bit higher? Can't really hear you.
Sorry. Hello?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We the opposition team disagree on banning alcohol as we define alcohol as like if you ban alcohol, majority of people wouldn't find any source of like stress release kind of thing. So to I would disagree with what Mel said. Mainly, it does not. Alcohol doesn't really condone crime because people people itself is like oh man. Alcohol itself does not make on the act of evil manner. Those underlying issues are caused by a person's biological and social tendencies. So I would say that alcohol could give like a boost of confidence lah, but in the end of the day, it doesn't really condone crime. And also, alcohol alcohol may cause a long-term effect, which is harmful. So that's one, but it may be true, but if only true if people keep on drinking every day lah. So it's also like the same of like you know eating in a way that if you eat a lot of sugar, you're gonna have like really high blood sugar rate kind of thing. And so it's a risk of your health lah. So a risk of health of like heart disease and diabetes, all these kind of things. So but studies have shown that if you do have moderate drinking, you do have some alcohol, it can raise some good levels of cholesterol, about 20% at most. And it can also accompanied by healthy diet and regular physical activities as per se of what we researched from Harvard. by this guy named Eric Rim. So he had mentioned that to only have 1 or 2 alcohol drinks daily could reduce one risk of a heart attack, even nearly the same as losing 30 pounds of dieting and physical activities. All right, I am done with my statement. We'll pass on to
Okay, thank you, Julia. And so re- I would refute that statement, which you have said 2 alcohol a day helps a person's health, which I beg to differ, because once you have committed into a habit of drinking 2 cups of alcohol, regardless of its alcoholic content, over a long period of time, it would be an addiction. And what do we call an addiction to alcohol? Alcoholism. So, to put things into a scale, Malaysia is said to be one of the largest consumer of alcohol in the world, which means that we spend on average of 500 million US dollar per year on alcohol. But is it really a good thing we spend so much money on it? Because what it means is that we spend more money buying alcohol rather than selling them. And why not the money we use through buying alcohol? Why not it be diverted to other departments such as education or mental health departments that treats alcoholism? So my point as to why we should ban alcohol and why it leads to alcoholism is as follows. When you are drunk, you lack self-control emotionally. Some of you may cry or be very happy-go-lucky when you are drunk, but there are still cases of people who act out aggressively. Although these cases are very rare, but the severity of each case casts a long shadow on the benefits of alcohol in this country. So, for example, we have a doctor in Singapore who has been found guilty of brutally bashing his ex-girlfriend who refused to have sex with him whilst he was drunk. This doctor locked her in a room and caused grievous harm to her face and life, as reported by Today Singapore. And it's also not uncommon for us to find cases of drunken brawls, whether or not it is purely one-sided aggression or just a whole group of people fighting. In 2019, there were several bouts of violence that were reported, such as a drunken policeman discharging his firearm to stop a fight between a couple outside a nightclub in KL. In 2016, a security guard was found guilty of assaulting his 63-year-old mother whilst intoxicated. Now, all these violent cases are quite evident as to why we should ban alcohol in Malaysia. But to make things worse, it is now considered cool or funny to be drunk beyond your control. And this can lead to several very unfavorable incidences. There has been recorded cases of drunk people or persons not having any memories or recollection from the events before, and this is claimed to be as blackout. And during these moments of blackout, people would engage in drunk sex, where consent it's very hard to argue whether or not he or she actually allowed for such acts to happen. And once you actually conduct the act of sexual intercourse, you may end up getting an unwanted pregnancy or an STI, which is short for a sexual transmitted infection through the act of sex. And to end my point, alcohol may be a surefire way to have a fun time, but there are also plenty of ways to have fun without the use of alcohol or any illicit substances. Through the banning of alcohol, there will be a safer and more mentally and physically healthier society that will come from it. I will now pass on to the second speaker for the opposition team.
Okay, I wanna disagree with your point by saying that yes, alcohol does indeed. I want to repeat Julia's point that alcohol does indeed bring these tendencies up, but they all are already part of that person's mindset. And the thing is, even if alcohol didn't cause it, there'll still be other factors that would affect these crimes as well. And I also want to bring up the fact that even if you're banning alcohol, it will definitely not exactly eliminate all of the crimes that you might think alcohol will bring about. That's just like saying that if you want to, like in Malaysia, rape, violence, or murder is all illegal in this country. However, there's still being reported. Rape cases are still being underreported. So for all you know, it's still more cases. Okay. And also for one of the few main things you said that for alcohol is that you bring up the case of how the doctor in Singapore caused sexual violence to his girlfriend or something like that. But it is said that men who commit sexual assault when drinking alcohol are just as similar to men who commit sexual assault when they're sober in most aspects of their personality or their attitudes. Factors like hypermasculinity or the belief in rigid gender norms were what mattered, not alcohol consumption for the most part. I also do want to say that even if alcohol was temporarily or permanently banned in Malaysia, that will also still increase crimes in this country. For instance, there has been a high tax on alcohol that's leading to the higher priced alcoholic drinks that's been contributed to alcohol-related harm, such as how natives in the interior turning to unchecked alcohol being smuggled by neighboring countries. It's reported in 2018, about 45 deaths were accounted for due to methanol poisoning as a result of consuming cheap fake liquors. Therefore, to just rid of alcohol or ban alcohol, that will pretty much just encourage contraband of unfiltered liquor or any alcohol that's harmful, which could also lead to the case of drunk driving problems. Is a cheaper option and it's easily available and the effects are unpredictable.
Can I have a POI?
Sure.
Okay, so you highlighted the thing where it's even if you ban alcohol, it won't eliminate all the crimes, right? That's what you mentioned. So even rape and murder, people have banned it, but it still occurs. But I think if we didn't ban rape and murder, there will be higher cases of rape and murder. So the ban does work in the fact that it reduces the numbers, but logically speaking, to ban like such an issue 100% is like it could never happen because humanity is not at that point. So the same thing with alcohol banning. Like our ban, if we banned alcohol, we have the logical sense that it's not going to work 100% because as you mentioned, there'll be illegal contraband, people who are smuggling it in. But the general consumers like myself and you, if the government issued a ban, we'd be like, okay, I would miss alcohol, but since it is now the law that we can't have alcohol, regardless of the smuggling, the whole like as a whole, the consumers of alcohol will reduce. The numbers will still reduce, in excluding like the small majority that are smuggling alcohol and etc. And then you also mentioned that men who consume alcohol or don't that still carry out sexual assault. So in that sense, you could say alcohol is like it's an aggressor. It increases people's innate aggressive tendencies, right? That's what you mentioned. So wouldn't it be better to just remove alcohol from the whole situation itself? Since people are already innately aggressive, we should just ban alcohol, which is just another trigger, just like how we ban drugs, which is a trigger for people's aggressions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so that was the end of my POI. Okay, thank you.
So the handout.
Handout.
I would like to pass on to the next speaker. I'm already done.
For the third speaker, I think that alcohol should be banned because underage drinking in Malaysia is increasing. More teenagers in Malaysia are starting to drink alcoholic beverages at an early age. Even though the legal age for Malaysia is 21 years old and above, which was officially changed from the previous legal drinking age 18 on December 2017. But still, the issues of underage age drinking has worsened in Malaysia. 35% of Malaysians youths under 18 consume alcohol regularly of all the legal and illegal drugs. Alcohol is by far the most regularly drinking by excess. A study by University Technology Mara graduates last year found teens as young as 15 in Kuala Lumpur drink
I'm sorry,
alcohol.
can you repeat again? Your line is not here. Cut off a bit.
A study by University Technology Mara graduates last year found
before this a bit.
a total of 35% of Malaysian youths under 18 consume alcohol regularly. Of all the legal and illegal drugs, alcohol is by far the most widely used by teenagers. And according to national survey, many are regular drinking to excess. A study by University Technology Mara graduates last year found teens as young as 15 in Kuala Lumpur drinking alcohol. The study on alcoholism among youth in Kuala Lumpur reviewed for 50% out of 150 respondents aged 15 to 24 had consumed alcohol, with 28% being 17 years old. It also found that 36% of those between 16 to 24 had drunk more than 4 units on at least one day in a week, compared to 20% aged 65 and above. Among young women, 37% of those between 16 and 24 had exceeded 3 units on at least one day, compared only 11% of those aged 65 and above. The study also stated that beer and cheap spirits, known locally as Samson, are Malaysians' favourite. Aimed at educating youth about problems related to alcohol consumption, they stated people who drank at a young age were more likely to try drugs, which ultimately could place them on the path of lifelong addiction. Based on the Malay Mail, Suryana Welfare Society for Children Chairman James Nayagam, who has 35 years experience dealing with juveniles and troubled youths, said he had come across our children as young as 13 consuming alcohol. There were about 200 children in the Petaling area abusing alcohol without their parents' knowledge. And the Penang Hindu Association Deputy President Murugia said teachers in the state had complained the school children were drinking fruity flavoured beer that had alcohol content of between 12 and 17%. They have also heard that school children have access to cheap liquor that costs from 1 ringgit 80 cent, and they will mix it with carbonated drinks. Increasing the age limit alone will not solve the problem. Even if children are educated on the dangers of alcohol abuse, they will not listen because most of the underage teenagers are stubborn. The National Union of the Teaching Professions Secretary General Datuk Lok Kim Beng also said that teachers have come across students who consume alcohol before attending school. For example, a few years ago, new designer alcoholic drinks targeting teenagers entered the Malaysian market. These are alcoholic lemonade and sodas with 4 to 5% alcohol, commonly referred to as pops. They went by brand names like Hooch, Stinger, DNA, Lemonade, and the bottles were colorful with cartoon characters, which clearly indicated they were designed specially to appeal to young people. They were initially sold in night spots and KTVs, which some underage would drink with the alcohol pops and with ecstasy. And soon make their way, and also alcohol soon make their way to supermarkets and sold just like soft drinks. There are many injury and social consequences when it comes to underage drinking, such as those people who drink alcohol during adolescence develop problems related to normal development. During this stage of life, the brain and mind going through an important stage of development, and alcohol can interfere with that. Drinking alcohol may mean that people perform badly in school or college. This may have a negative impact on their future opportunities on life. It can be hard to find success without suitable qualification. It is strongly associated with teen suicide. It can encourage teenagers to engage in vandalism or other criminal acts. It can also mean that young people become sexually active. They can engage in sex acts that they later regret. Those individuals who drink at a young age are most likely to try other drugs. This means that such individuals could be on path to the hell of lifelong drug addiction. It is not necessary for young people to drink for many years because they cause grave damage to the mental and physical health. In conclusion, alcohol consumption among school-going children is a growing trend in Malaysia as these youngsters have access to such drinks. From convenience stores to the neighborhood bar, teenagers do not seem to have a problem gaining access to cold bottled beer at their convenience. This trend would only lead to teens struggling with alcoholism into their adulthood. Changing the laws by increasing the age limits for alcohol consumption is not an effective solution to underage drinking. Even campaigns prohibiting drinking had also not have been success. Therefore, I think that alcohol should be banned in Malaysia to avoid alcoholism. Next, I'll pass it to the opposition team member.
Hi. My name is Abigail, and I will be the third speaker for the opposition team. First of all, I would like to argue on the points that Sheryl talked about underage drinking. First of all, the issue with underage drinking is not is the issue with leniency on sale protocols for authorities. So it's not exactly alcohol, but rather the enforcement of the law that is the issue here. Secondly, I would like to talk about the changing of age. You mentioned earlier that it was not effective, so I would like to ask you back, what makes you think banning alcohol would be more effective? Yes. I would like to continue on what Vernon and Julia has mentioned earlier on how banning alcohol will actually create a more corrupt society, and we'll see a rise in increase of bootlegging of alcohol, which is far worse than permitted alcohol. Okay. Secondly, I would like to argue that the banning of alcohol is not effective because that essentially means that um, the affirmative team believes that people are incapable of change and that education of consumption of alcohol is not effective, which definitely Malaysia has to improve on, and which could probably be a better way instead of banning alcohol completely. Secondly, when you propose to ban alcohol, it actually condemns people to a life that is bound by a substance, meaning you are trying to say that people cannot control themselves. That is why we want to take this away from people. I would like to believe that people are more willing to change and more willing to want a better life for themselves. In the case of addiction, according to the American Society Addiction Medicine, addiction is not a choice or a bad behavior. Rather, it is a chronic brain disease. So instead of punishing or shining alcoholism in a bad light, we should rather be educating them and helping them. As for the previous point, can I go previous point? Like someone. Okay. As for the previous point that Sam mentioned, how money should be pushed towards educating people of alcoholism. That is true, and I completely support that. But it is completely irrelevant to have that once alcohol is banned. That is all that I have. Thank you.
Okay, so it's my turn, right? Okay, just give me a moment. Chronic disease, educating them. Okay, so Abby, you mentioned a few things which I do not agree with as a whole. So you mentioned that the problem with underage drinking is that we are very lenient on the sale of alcohol and that the law should be enforced. So wouldn't a ban be an enforcement of the law? So like by banning, we are increasing the laws and the restriction placed on alcohol. So then in the end, that would curb underage drinking because we are providing a new set of rules. Like, okay, we were too lenient, now we introduce this ban with stricter conditions. So wouldn't that eventually help the underage drinking that you were saying? So then you also mentioned that banning would lead to a more corrupt society with a lot of illegal alcohol. I agree that it would reduce. I mean, it will cause like more bootleggers and smuggling. But the same can also be said about drugs. Drugs are illegal, but people still illegally obtain drugs. But again, like I mentioned earlier, the number of people who get the access to alcohol pre-ban and post-ban is very different. Like the general public, just looking at the general public, once alcohol is banned, they don't have the access to alcohol as a whole. Like how many people do you know are like, I need alcohol so much, I'm gonna get it from a smuggler, like common people like us, like in the middle class. Maybe the high class will, but that's up to them. And then you also said that it's better to educate people as opposed to banning, but has that worked actually in Malaysia? Like maybe it has worked for some people, but not everyone. So you also mentioned that, oh yes, continuing on that point of education, that works for people who are of the higher class, educated, and they have the avenues to get this information. They understand that, oh yeah, alcohol is bad, so I will drink it responsibly. But what about the rural communities, like people from places where they can't get as much education and they're not so aware of the consequences? And like you mentioned, we have illegal alcohol and people just selling alcohol. Like Sheryl mentioned, kids are able to get alcohol. So these people are unaware that alcohol is bad because there's no ban against alcohol,
We
right?
have a
So
POI on the other
okay,
team.
okay, yes, I accept the POI.
Hi, yes, I would like to point. It is
POI.
it is true that it works for the higher class and the lower class may not have access to such education, which is what we have to work on as the law. But secondly, that is where like
Bootleg.
bootleg alcohol actually is so rampant in the undereducated, in the rural areas, and among the indigenous people, as stated by Vernon. Okay, that's the end of my point.
Okay, so I want to pour your poi. You said that that's the lower class are the ones with the bootleg rampant. So what is something that you would suggest that we could do to curb them if you think banning is not the way? Because I feel that by banning, we're still removing the vast majority of alcohol. And it's also like by banning, we have created the perception that no, alcohol is bad. It's on the same level as drugs. Don't take alcohol. Because I think now the thing with alcohol, it's like socially acceptable. It's like, oh, you drink alcohol? Yeah, it's like, it's a fun pastime. I use it as a stress relief, etc. But maybe by banning it, people realize, okay, alcohol is a serious issue because it is one of the top 10 addictive substances on par with heroin and cocaine, but it's just that people don't realize that it's so addictive. So the lower classes would need education, yes, but if we just educate them but without removing the alcohol, they still have access to it and their education might work. So how would you what would be your suggestion to help these people who would still get bootleg alcohol besides education?
Continue, rebuttal.
Okay, there's another POI from Julia. Yes, Julia?
Sorry. Okay. I POI you.
Okay.
All right. Because you also, I don't know why, but you have to bring on drugs as well for some reason. So I would say that if you want to completely ban alcohol, that means you are also completely banning the part where alcohol can actually treat wounds as well. So, so in a way, yeah, fine. The drinking part, oh, you point the point.
Can you elaborate?
All right. So, yeah, majority of people in hospitals, when using the meds and everything, right? So having to have a alcohol based kind of medicine actually, alcohol helps to actually treat wounds. So
POI.
yes, POI.
We are defining alcohol as the alcoholic beverage, not the medicinal,
Then why did you actually bring up drugs
as a substance.
as a substance?
We are
You,
defining alcohol as an alcoholic beverage, not those used as a composition for medicine.
mm. All right, you may proceed, Soda.
Okay, yeah. Okay, the good point by Julia, but like Melanie said, we are saying alcohol in the sense of a drink, and we compare it not to like medical drugs, but drugs like cocaine and heroin, which I don't think are used in medical practices. So yeah, okay. So continuing with my rebuttal, from Julia's first point when she spoke, she mentioned that alcohol is in your definition that alcohol is needed because it helps people relieve stress. But to this, I want to ask: aren't there other outlets for stress relief that are healthier, like exercise or yoga or dancing? There's like so many different outlets. You don't have to turn to alcohol for your stress relief. And then I think I already mentioned this as well. You said that the biological tendencies people are aggressive, so we shouldn't have alcohol. Like I think I mentioned this, alcohol is a trigger for that. So shouldn't we just remove the trigger from the situation itself, since people are already innately biologically inclined to violence? And then you also mentioned, Julia, that studies have shown that moderate drinking is good, which again, I want to bring back to moderate drinking is good for those people who are educated and they know that they should be drinking moderately. But if we are highlighting those people who are like from low income and maybe not so educated, they don't know the negative effects of alcohol. They're just like, alcohol is like you mentioned, a stress relief. For me, I just want to drink alcohol. It makes me feel good. But your recommended earlier.
Wrap up quickly.
Rebuttal wrap up quickly. Okay, so anyway, so this again it applies to people who have no income, but it lowered the illegal. Okay, man, same. I've included this as well. So I think in the end, regardless of the arguments that you guys made, that yes, banning alcohol would cause other issues to arise. It is similar in that other substances, when we ban them, there is a rise, but eventually in the long term aspect, the alcohol abuse and like alcohol people who irresponsibly use alcohol will reduce. So I think we should ban alcohol. Yes, there we go. End of rebuttal. Okay, I will pass it on to the last speaker from the opposing team with their rebuttal.
Okay. Thank you, Soda, for your points. And I disagree on every single point that you guys mentioned. So let's start with Mel. Melanie mentioned that it brings a lot of negative impact, like binge drinking quickly, and also like basically what I heard from all you guys, all your points are kind of related. So I'm just gonna sum up everything. So basically, you all just mentioned that it's gonna bring a negative impact, like binge drinking because like binge drinking quickly, it might brings to sexual violence, and sexual violence which leads to like non-consensual sex, or like to the more worse scenario would be like rape. And you guys also mentioned about underage drinking and like how the alcohol should be, the money on alcohol, like spending on alcohol should be focusing on education instead of like buying all this drink. So like, first of all, the sexual violence. People just use alcohol as their excuse just to like they blame it on the alcohol to like justify their action, to make them like felt good. I mean, not felt good, but valid their own action. So I wouldn't say that alcohol will bring sexual violence, like totally bring sexual violence. They just need an excuse for themselves. So the next thing, like underage drinking, is I think the source of underage drinking is also from parenting. Now I reject your point, Soda.
Okay.
Huh? I reject your point, Soda. Okay, so underage drinking is all because of bad parenting. I mean, the start of like we were born in like a family, and then which is why we like seeing our parents what they do will affect us on our behavior, on the children's behavior. So underage drinking, the problem is start from bad parenting, not alcohol. Alcohol is an excuse again to justify bad parenting. And then next is talking about, Soda mentioned about high class and middle class. The high class got better education to and so hence like they're more aware of like drinking. For lower class, they're like lower or middle income, which is like means they like get access to like not as much of education like the high class do. No, because right now we all have internet. Yeah, some people might doesn't have internet, but like most of the time, most of us do. So we can still gain access to the internet and get information despite which class you're from. So you get some education in drinking through the internet. It's really convenient now. So I don't think like it matters to the high class or middle class or low class. And the alcohol addiction is so that personal addiction from alcohol is really that person. Okay, it's like if that person already have some mental issue or mental health, and while drinking alcohol at the same time, yeah, it's gonna make it worse. But the underlying problem is that person's mental issue. It's not because of alcohol. Alcohol is just slightly boosts it, but doesn't mean that it should be take all the blame. And then
Can I POI?
I reject. Wait,
Damn it. Okay. I see how it is.
and then also in terms not the money part that you should spend on education, yeah, true. Like what I'm gonna bring out what Abby said just now, that Abby and Vernon, yeah, both of them mentioned about the relating the money with alcohol part. Like yes, you can ban alcohol and like rather good, but banning it, like okay, taking an example from US, they did try to prohibit alcohol, end up they failed, and it affect not just the society, but also like the economy as a whole, because like closing down all these like breweries or distilleries and saloon will lead to like elimination of like thousands of jobs. So imagine banning alcohol, you're also taking away people's job. And then like when you ban the alcohol, it also means like higher tax burden on like the middle class or lower class citizen, because like the government will find a new source of income of government and like wait, let me rephrase. Yeah, banning alcohol is gonna raise the tax on the middle class and lower class citizen, and which is also going to bring a new problem for the government, like such as like finding a new source of income for them. It's like taking COVID-19 right now, for example, like a lot of people lose their job is due to like the restricting movement, like not able to go to work, and slowly a lot of business closed down. Same goes to alcohol. If you close down the business, people will lose their job. Yes, Melanie, I accept your POI now.
Okay, so just now you mentioned that you compared it to the United States, where they tried to ban alcohol and it caused economic consequences. So I'm assuming you're talking about the prohibition. Okay, so I want to rather clarify that, like, you mentioned that it failed and in the end they had to repeal it basically. But I would argue that the prohibition didn't fail necessarily, because they did see an immediate decline in the cases of alcoholism and the issues of related to alcohol. So in even after the prohibition was retracted, the number of people that were actually drinking alcohol greatly reduced compared to before they banned alcohol. And in the end, what caused the economy to crash was not the banning of alcohol, but rather the Great Depression, which was already a stock market crash. So I would argue that it's not the fault of alcohol that the economy crashed. It just so happened that they were banning alcohol during the time where the stock market crashed. So I feel like that is not quite the most solid argument when it comes to why we shouldn't ban alcohol. Because in the end, banning alcohol helps to reduce the amount of people that are drinking alcohol. Okay.
But you say you wanted to ban alcohol just to reduce the problem, but restricting like banning is like totally that's not reducing. That's like stopping. So for our point is like we just like restrict with a more restrict enforced law. That's the only part that will be like a reducing in the problem. The stopping, like you can't stop something immediately. So banning alcohol won't be that effective. Like control some, like let's say the crime, the sexual crime, or the teen underage drinking. So banning alcohol might even get them more creative and find a new way just to get the alcohol. So totally banning is just gonna cause lots more trouble. And when you mentioned that like the prohibition is just because like the Great Depression, yes, that's that kind of possibility, but that it isn't that high also. So that can consider as one of the fact, but it can't be like the entire fact. And then to end this entire debate, I'm just going to conclude that banning alcohol would be as effective as like not banning it, because banning it is just gonna make people like be more creative on finding more ways to get access to alcohol. Some worst case scenario is they make those cheap fake alcohol, which used to be a case in Malaysia last time, that the cheap fake alcohol brought like several death cases. But why the death cases happened? Because of the like implementing banning alcohol that time. Yes, Mal, you can make your POI again.
Like it's true that banning alcohol will cause this kind of bootlegging, but is it not the job of is it not like the execution that is at fault rather than like the law? Because yes, we should ban because our stance is that we should ban alcohol. We should make a law that bans alcohol, and it is up to the law enforcement to execute it. So in a perfect world where we enforce the law, we execute this law, would it not reason that it would actually reduce bootlegging? Because when the prohibition happened, and bootlegging happened, it was because they had not enough funds for the police force. By banning alcohol, we can redirect the funds from being used to to treat the problems related to alcohol. We can redirect that into the police force, and that way we will be able to reduce bootlegging.
Can I ask you a question? So, yeah, can I ploy your ploy? So, by saying that, redirecting our money from that to like enforcement, where are we getting this money?
From those, those centers where you treat basically alcoholic, like how to say, where the government is going to have funds to curb alcohol because alcohol is a problem. By banning alcohol, you are taking that money that is purposed for, like, let's say, towards the curbing of alcohol, like, or to reduce alcohol and like alcohol campaigns and that sort. We can redirect them towards police enforcement.
That's true, but how long will that reserve last? Because there is no longer an education for alcoholism, so they wouldn't have funds for that anymore. So you are basically taking, for example, they prepared 1 year of funds for this place, and that will fund the enforcement for like a year. So after that, what is enforcing this so-called ban? Like how will that be enforced?
You could have those people who are out of jobs from the closing down of breweries, and you can help them. Like, you can make them like police railer or something like that, and you can have patrols.
But then that income will be different. Like you want someone, let's say that person is working in a brewery as a manager level, and now because of banning alcohol, and then they have to find a new job, and like you suggest that maybe they can do a police railer, that would be a really huge downgrade, and then it's gonna affect that person's affect him or her in all sorts of ways.
It's gone on for too long, apparently, according to Sam.
Yeah. So let's just end it here.
Okay.
All agree? All right.
Uh,
So thank you for the affirmative team time to this debate with us, and that will be the end of
Over to you, Chairperson.
Okay, with that, this concludes the debate by both teams. And thank you everyone for coming and for listening on till this till now. And with that, I shall conclude the debate. How do I stop?
Stop recording.
Okay.